when somebody has the opportunity, and I think a story is, everybody loves a story. There's nothing better than a story. And when someone stands on a stage in front of 2,000 people and talks about their journey to heal themselves from a chronic health condition, and it's not always pretty. They lose things. They lose family. They sometimes lose their careers or get sick before they get better. And you see this person's persistence, and you see that they were not doing the work, their inward work to heal. They were doing the work to change. And if they understood, if they truly changed, that their biology should change, and they were uncompromising every day in showing up for themselves and staying conscious of their unconscious self, and then reprogramming themselves in some way. When they tell that story, it's the 4-minute mile. It's somebody breaking through a level of consciousness or unconsciousness in the collective that's observing the example of truth. They're actually relating with that person in a way that causes them to examine possibility differently. And when you become conscious of a new possibility, a change in consciousness is a change in awareness, right? So now it's in the collective. And lo and behold, it's not uncommon. We just had this happen in our week-long event in Denver just a little over a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And we had 6 people stand up out of a wheelchair by the end of the event. Now, I wasn't expecting that, but one person that had MS in the middle of the week had a very profound experience. And a professional athlete, NFL football player, and stood up for the audience. And when he stood up, he said, "I thought I was going to a yoga retreat. I thought my brother was taking me to a yoga retreat. I had no idea what we were doing here." And then he said, I just never loved myself. And it was his act of change that somehow changed his health condition. He somehow upregulated genes in different ways, suppressed the genes for MS, and somehow he was more mobile. He was walking by the end of the event, and he was the magic number one. And when everybody saw that and the audience was excited, we started seeing other people have a similar experience. Now that possibility is becoming more of a reality for people. So I never limit what could actually happen, but I can tell you that what an amazing time right now to witness people really doing the uncommon.
When you recited that story, I could see the emotion in your face as you say it. And I can only imagine, with the information that you have and the beliefs you have about healing, change, transformation, the sense of urgency you must carry and the sense of like responsibility almost, I guess you must carry, knowing what's possible.
Yeah, well, I do feel responsible for always keeping the information based in science and as pure as possible. I feel it's really important to do the research that we're doing. I mean, we've studied so much from a scientific standpoint, the process of change and the process of transformation, and what meditation actually can do for a person in terms of their biology and some of the changes that we're seeing just in 7 days. My responsibility really is to give people my greatest understanding of the truth and numerous opportunities to experience it, nothing more. You know, there is a way to inspire people into possibility. And so we combine different models of science, whether it's quantum physics or neuroscience or neuroendocrinology or psychoneuroimmunology, the mind-body connection, epigenetics, electromagnetism. All of these sciences allow people to understand themselves better. And if knowledge is power, knowledge about yourself is self-empowerment. You can empower people to do something with it. So the more you understand what you're doing in the process of change, the more you understand why you're doing it. As I said, the how gets easier. So we now know that if you give people sound scientific information, and that is the contemporary language of mysticism, and they can learn that information, they're basically making new circuits in their brain. That's what learning is. Learning is forging new synaptic connections. But if you don't review what you learn, if you don't repeat it, it's so much easier to forget it than to remember it. So you got to repeat it over and over again. So we allow people in our workshops to then begin to turn and teach it back to somebody. They have to really explain it. If they can't explain it, it's not wired in their brain, and something's going to be left to conjecture, to superstition, to dogma, to spirituality, and that's not the result we want. We want them to use science as that model, and if they can explain that model and remind themselves what they've learned, reproduce the same level of mind, nerve cells that fire together, wire together. So they begin to install the neurological hardware in their brain.
By teaching others.
Yeah, exactly. So that they are prepared for an experience. So then, if that information is installed in their brain, that philosophy, that theory, that knowledge and information, and now they can remember it and they have that model of understanding, and they understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. If we can set up the conditions in the environment and give them the proper instruction, if they can get their behaviors to match their intentions, if they can get their actions equal to their thoughts, if they can get their mind and body working together, they're going to have a new experience. Now, experience enriches circuitry in the brain. That's what experiences does. The moment those neurons begin to string into place, though, another part of the brain makes a chemical, and that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. And the moment you feel unlimited, the moment you feel grateful, the moment you feel empowered, the moment you feel whole, now you're teaching your body chemically to understand what your mind has intellectually understood. The information is just not in the brain now. The information now is literally in the body. And now you're embodying the truth of that knowledge, of that philosophy, of that theory. So then you're teaching your body and instructing your body chemically to understand what your mind has intellectually understood. Okay, so then that information that's coming as a new experience is changing your biology in some way, and we've actually shown this. So then if you've done it once, then it means you should be able to do it again. And the idea is to be able to repeat an experience. And if you can repeat it over and over again, both neurologically and chemically, neurochemically, you can condition your mind and body to begin to work as one. And when you can do it so many times that your body now knows how to do it better than your conscious mind, it's innate in you.
So I want to map out this process so that I make sure I understand it. It starts with the neurology, which I heard is a thought which you then ingrain in your mind by teaching it to someone else. Is that accurate?
Well, first thing you have to do is you got to give people information.
Yeah.
And science is probably the closest to the truth in terms of information. And so when your brain is exposed to information and you're present and you're paying attention, that neurons begin to connect. That's what learning is. Learning is forging new synaptic connections. The Nobel Prize researcher, Kandel, in the year 2000, the researcher said that if you learned one bit of information and you paid attention to that information for about an hour, it would double the number of connections in your brain as a result of your interaction with that information. But if you don't review it, if you don't repeat it, if you don't have to think about it, circuits prune apart, right? So if learning is making new synaptic connections and remembering is maintaining and sustaining them. So it's so much easier to forget this information than to remember it. So you learn it. Once I got a person's head nodding, then they turn to the person next to them and say, let me try this out. Let me try this out and let me see if I can repeat it. And so between the two of them, they exchange that information and they start to build a model of understanding. I understand, I got that, okay. And we advance the information a little bit more and they